everyone, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about more than just the mechanics of writing. I have a very fun and interesting video for you today, although I think I said that the last time, but I wouldn't be making them if they weren't fun and interesting. So as the title says, I want to talk about using film tricks or film methods in novel writing. I had a lovely discussion with a friend of mine who is an ex-teacher. She taught film and media studies and as well as English. Her name is Leslie. She's a little bit camera shy, so I just recorded the conversation on my phone. I will probably insert some bits and pieces of the conversation in snatches throughout the video, but I'm going to try and condense what we spoke about. Okay, so the opening shot. We spoke briefly about the opening shot, and it's something that films use to establish exactly when and where the setting is. So establishing your setting is important, and I think that's something that's very important to do early on in your book as well. It grounds your reader, lets them know where this story is going to be taking place.
Okay, so if you think about the opening shot in a film, they always establish exactly where something is actually taking place. So if it's in New York, they have what we call, and quite often within film, when you're doing film study, you would then also liken it or and do a lot of things with the theorists that we would use. So it would be iconic things, and that quite often comes from, I don't know if you've ever heard of a theorist called Barthus. He said that there's always signs and symbols. So if you take, for example, a film that is taking place in New York, they would then have either Central Park, or they would have the Statue of Liberty, or something like that.
Yeah, like icons.
Yes,
yeah.
So you would have, and those are your signs and symbols, and they are representations. And I think quite often, if you think about a story that you're writing, quite often novels would do the same sort of thing for your opening shot as to where something's happening. If it's a horror film, you quite often use things that will actually have dark corners, spooky house, all sort of things. Those are all the representations, all the signs of the symbols. So I think books, in a way, do a lot of the same thing.
Next, we talked a lot about shot choice. So in film, there's high angle shots, low angle shots, extreme close-up, medium shots, that kind of thing. I want to insert a little bit of an audio clip here of Leslie talking about shots, because she explains it better than I can. The choice of shot can really inform your reader or your viewer on certain things that maybe are a little bit more difficult to portray otherwise.
I don't know if you've ever noticed within horror films that there are a lot of close-up shots. Right, whereas in others they don't have as many. Close-up shots are there quite often to see detail.
Yeah.
So you as an author, if you were speaking about somebody's steely, icy blue eyes, you would know straight away that this was not a friendly person. If you spoke about somebody having a hint of grey at the temples, you would also be referring to age. Now that's what they do with their close-ups quite often. So you have extreme close-ups, which you would actually then maybe be focusing on eyes or mouth, like when you write about maybe the side of the mouth maybe curling up. So it might be referring to a sneer that the person is, where film actually does it so well, much easier than possibly writing does, because as we've already said, you need the tools of being able to describe and also then explain yourself. There's a lovely shot that they also call, for in horror shots, they call the keyhole shots.
Oh yes, yeah.
So that particularly is, you might see this eyeball, or you might see even, for example, in the James Bond films, you sometimes will see where they actually have the reflection of somebody in the eye.
Ooh, I love those shots.
Beautiful
so
shots.
Beautiful, yeah.
If you have a high angle shot and you're looking down at somebody, that quite often is to show that that person, say, is in maybe an inferior position, or is maybe a bit afraid or whatever, so that's supposed to what it is. quite often if you think of the superhero films, where they have a lot of low angle films, in other words, they're looking up at the superhero, it makes them look mighty and what have you. So you have to then try and translate that all into language when you're writing. What you'd also have is when you know that somebody's perhaps in trouble, or there's a problem, or there's this whole sort of thing of the world is not right. Film would have a canted shot. Now that is something that you actually cannot really describe other than use language if you're using that as a tool to say that there's something going on within this person's life, or they quite often you think of horror films quite often use it when you see something
like that tilted
coming down a passageway, things aren't as they seem. James Bond films quite often use it. They love that canted sort of shot. To get back to your angles, what you normally have is your close-up shot. I've already spoken about you have extreme close-ups, then you have your close-up. So that could be maybe the whole of the head, maybe anything that comes up to the shoulders. So it still is, it doesn't have to, it can be a hand, it can be a knee, it can be a foot, it depends.
Intentionally leaving things out. Yeah.
So you might have it if you think of when we have some films where you might just show somebody's foot. So you know by what the foot has on it, whether it's male or female. So you have that. Then you have what we call your medium shots. Now if you watch normally when you have people speaking about the news, you only really see them up to their waist. Because the rest is not important at all. So that's a medium shot. You also have what we call where you can have a single shot. We have one person perhaps, and the camera will then, you and I will might be chatting, so it switches from one person to the other. Full length shot from head all the way to their feet. It quite often emphasizes perhaps body language. It can be looking what the person is wearing. It can be maybe the stance that they're taking. So there's a whole lot of reasons for using that as well. So you have those different kinds of shots, and cinematography is fantastic in the way they actually use all this stuff to tell their tale, so to speak.
One thing I would like to highlight about shot choice, which is something that we spoke about, was how films intentionally leave things out of the shot. Now, we as writers, I think more people tend to overwrite than underwrite, and we have a lot of stuff in our heads. It's something I've spoken a lot about before. We know everything, we want to share everything about our stories, but there are certain things that it actually is more beneficial to the story to leave out rather than put in. This is especially important when we're talking about foreshadowing. Films do this thing that is really great where they give you just a very short little bit of information, and it's shown for a very short time, just long enough for you to see it, take it in, and be able to remember it later. And then when it's reintroduced later on in the story, you can immediately recognize where and when it's from and what it related to. One thing that Leslie mentioned about improving writing, which is something that I want to include, is that you can use film to improve your writing, whether that be watching a very short section of film and maybe expanding upon it, using even photographs, describing them, that kind of thing. Something that I also want to say is, when I get stuck, sometimes it helps to imagine your story as a movie. I think using this approach kind of helps you filter out the things that are maybe could be considered fluff or maybe a bit superfluous, and it helps you focus on what is very important. A tip that Leslie gives us is to, when you watch movies and you look at shots and you see what's on screen, to always question why. Why are they doing this? Why are they including that? She also said to apologize because you'll probably never watch movies the same again, but it's a very good exercise to do. Another thing we spoke a lot about is being just cinematic in general. And you actually remember, you mentioned reflections, just so before I forget. I watched, when I was watching Shadowhunters last night, there was two characters that swapped bodies, and the one character, Magnus and Valentine. So Valentine is the prisoner and Magnus is kind of the friendly, and they accidentally switch bodies. And then Magnus's body, Valentine in Magnus's body, comes and confronts Magnus and Valentine's body, and they are talking through this glass window, and there was a beautiful shot. If I can find it, Donna editing, if I can find it, put it on screen. It was a shot where you saw Valentine's body, but the reflection on the window was superimposed with Magnus's face. And when I saw it, and it was such a beautiful moment of cinematography, which I think to pick up on small things like that and not be afraid to kind of turn things a little bit different and maybe describe that reflection instead of taking the more easier path of saying, oh, they confronted each other, but to kind of, like I said, that one-liner, like you said, that it can be a bit difficult to be kind of cinematic in your writing, but I think it's a jump that is really
necessary.
Great. Yeah. Another thing we spoke about was characterization. So just those little bits and pieces that make your character really truly unique. And I think as readers, we worry a lot about relatability. Is our character relatable? Can our reader connect with our characters? And I think sometimes we shy away from making really unique characters. And I want to say, don't be afraid to make your characters really unique, because it's not mannerisms and habits of your character that make them relatable. It's just the simple fact that they are human, that they have flaws, that they are just a person. That is what your reader will connect to. Another thing Leslie mentioned was using language, the way people speak, to differentiate your characters. If you think, and I've mentioned it before about Hagrid in the Harry Potter series, the way J.K. Rowling writes out his dialogue brings to your mind a very specific accent. We spoke a lot about using symbols, whether that be color, say red to represent passion, purple to represent royalty. The Eiffel Tower represents France. Use symbols in your writing. Some of them might come off a bit cliche, but you can really use that to your advantage. We also spoke about patterns and different kind of genres, boy meets girl and such. One thing that Leslie brought up that I thought was excellent to reiterate was that the way generally films go, and story in general, is that it starts on an equilibrium, and then pretty much the whole story is about trying to right this equilibrium or to find a new equilibrium, and then it ends very satisfyingly on another equilibrium. We spoke about playing with readers' and viewers' expectations. We mentioned various other films and books and such. If you want to listen to our full conversation in its entirety, no edits or anything like that, I will put a link for that also in the description box below, so you can listen to that at your leisure if you would like to. And that is that. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out my other channel, donnajobooks. All of the links are down in the description box below. I hope you have a lovely weekend. Enjoy your day and subscribe if you would like if you would like, and I will see you back here next time. Bye.